The bright morning sun streamed through the airport terminal windows as a professional couple made their way to Gate B7. The husband, a tall man in his mid-30s wearing a well-fitted navy suit, walked alongside his wife, who was dressed in a crisp blazer and pencil skirt. Both pulled their carry-on luggage, discussing their upcoming legal conference presentation in San Francisco. They had done this routine countless times before. Boarding passes ready, IDs in hand, light conversation about their connecting flights. As seasoned travelers and respected attorneys who frequently flew for work, they knew the drill by heart. The wife even joked about hoping the airline would have her favorite apple juice, a small comfort she always looked forward to during flights. As they approached their gate, they noticed the final boarding call for first-class passengers. Having earned their status through countless business trips, they joined the priority boarding line. A few passengers ahead of them chatted about the weather in San Francisco, while others typed away on their phones, lost in their own worlds. The couple reached the front of the line, where a gate agent greeted them with a warm smile, scanned their boarding passes, and wished them a pleasant flight. Everything seemed perfectly normal as they made their way down the jet bridge, the wife leading the way while sharing a story about their daughter's recent science fair project. Once inside the aircraft, they located their seats in row 3, the familiar leather first-class seats welcoming them for the 4-hour journey ahead. The husband lifted their carry-on bags with practiced ease, carefully arranging them in the overhead compartment to make space for other passengers' luggage. That's when they first noticed her, a flight attendant with streaks of gray in her blonde hair, watching them with an intensity that felt uncomfortable. While other crew members busied themselves helping passengers find their seats or storing bags, this particular attendant seemed fixated on their every move. As the husband adjusted his bag to make more room, the flight attendant stepped forward. "Sir, is there a problem with the overhead compartment?" Her tone carried an edge that didn't match the situation. The wife looked up from her phone, where she'd been texting their house sitter about their dog's medication schedule. "No problem at all," the husband replied with a polite smile, closing the compartment. "Just making sure everything fits properly." He sat down next to his wife, who had already pulled out the safety information card, a habit from her early days of flying when she'd been a nervous traveler. The flight attendant lingered, her eyes narrowing as she watched them settle into their seats. When the wife pulled out her water bottle to take a sip, the attendant immediately stepped forward. "Ma'am, I need to check if that was purchased after the security checkpoint." The wife wordlessly showed the receipt still stuck to the bottle, but the attendant's suspicious expression didn't fade. Other passengers continued boarding, some giving curious glances at the unusual attention being paid to the couple in row 3. A businessman across the aisle buried himself in his newspaper, occasionally peering over the top to observe the growing tension. 2 college students a few rows back whispered to each other, their eyes darting between their phones and the unfolding scene. The couple maintained their composure, having dealt with similar situations before in their professional lives. They spoke quietly to each other about their upcoming presentation, trying to ignore the flight attendant's hovering presence. The wife pulled out her laptop, planning to review their conference notes during the flight, but she could feel the attendant's eyes boring into her as she did so. As the final passengers boarded and the cabin crew prepared for departure, the tension remained palpable. The couple exchanged knowing looks. They'd experienced this before, the unwarranted scrutiny, the subtle but unmistakable bias. Years of professional success hadn't made them immune to such moments. The husband gently squeezed his wife's hand, a gesture that spoke volumes about their shared experiences and strength. They'd built their careers on staying calm under pressure, on turning difficult moments into opportunities for positive change. As the plane's doors closed and the safety demonstration began, neither of them could have predicted how this flight would become a catalyst for exactly that kind of change. The flight attendant continued her rounds, but her attention kept returning to row 3, where the couple maintained their dignified demeanor despite the growing discomfort of being watched. Little did anyone know that the events about to unfold would spark a conversation. The flight had barely reached cruising altitude when the situation began to spiral to San Francisco. The same flight attendant who had watched the couple during boarding now seemed determined to find fault with their every move. The atmosphere in the first-class cabin grew increasingly uncomfortable as other passengers couldn't help but notice the unfolding drama. When the husband reached for his briefcase under the seat to grab a pen, the flight attendant rushed over. "Sir, you need to keep your items stowed during flight," she said sharply, despite other passengers freely accessing their belongings. The wife glanced around, noticing several travelers with laptops and tablets already out. "I just needed a pen to fill out some conference forms," the husband explained calmly, his voice steady despite the growing frustration. He held up the pen and paperwork to show her, maintaining his professional demeanor. The flight attendant crossed her arms, unconvinced. A few minutes later, when the wife asked for a glass of water, the flight attendant's response was equally hostile. "You'll have to wait until we start our beverage service," she snapped, despite having just served drinks to the passengers across the aisle. The couple exchanged glances, but remained silent, years of professional experience helping them maintain their composure. The tension continued to build as the flight progressed. When the husband got up to use the restroom, the flight attendant immediately announced over the intercom that all passengers must remain seated, despite the seatbelt sign being off. He quietly returned to his seat, aware of the sympathetic looks from fellow travelers. A young woman sitting nearby couldn't help but notice what was happening. She discreetly started recording on her phone, keeping it partially hidden behind her magazine. An elderly gentleman across the aisle shook his head in disapproval at the flight attendant's behavior, while a business executive 2 rows ahead typed something furiously on his phone. The situation reached a breaking point during the beverage service. When the wife accidentally dropped her napkin, the flight attendant's reaction was completely disproportionate. "Ma'am, if you can't maintain a clean environment, we're going to have a problem," she declared loudly, drawing attention from throughout the cabin. The husband, still maintaining his professional demeanor, spoke up. "Excuse me, but I don't understand why you're treating us this way. We're simply trying to enjoy our flight like everyone else." His voice was firm but respectful, the same tone he used in countless courtroom presentations. The flight attendant's face reddened. "Are you questioning my authority? I can have this plane landed and have you removed if you continue to be disruptive." Her voice carried through the cabin, causing several passengers to look up in disbelief. A businesswoman sitting nearby spoke up. "They haven't been disruptive at all. I've been watching this whole time." Others nodded in agreement, but the flight attendant was already storming toward the front of the plane, speaking rapidly into her crew phone. The couple sat in stunned silence, their hands clasped together. Around them, other passengers began speaking in hushed tones. Some pulled out their phones, either recording or typing messages. A flight attendant from economy class, who had witnessed some of the interactions, looked concerned and uncomfortable. "I've never seen anything like this," whispered the businessman across the aisle, leaning slightly toward them. "I'm documenting everything. This isn't right." Several other passengers nodded in agreement, offering supportive glances to the couple. Minutes later, the captain's voice crackled over the intercom, announcing they would be making an unscheduled landing in Denver due to a situation in the cabin. The couple remained perfectly still, their faces showing the calm dignity that had served them well throughout their careers, even as whispers and worried glances filled the cabin. As the plane began its descent into Denver, passengers throughout the first-class cabin were already sending messages and emails. What had started as a routine flight was about to become something much more significant, a moment that would spark important conversations about bias and accountability in the airline industry. The wife squeezed her husband's hand, both of them knowing that their years of handling difficult situations in courtrooms had prepared them for what was about to come. They had no way of knowing that their dignified response to this treatment would soon inspire thousands and lead to meaningful change. The plane touched down at Denver International Airport with a gentle thud, the mid-afternoon sun casting long shadows across the runway. As the aircraft taxied to its gate, the tension in the cabin was thick enough to cut with a knife. The couple sat quietly in their first-class seats, maintaining their composure even as they noticed several police vehicles with flashing lights waiting on the tarmac. Through the windows, passengers could see 4 police officers approaching the jet bridge. The flight attendant who had caused the situation stood near the front of the plane, repeatedly straightening her uniform and glancing nervously at her phone. The other crew members exchanged uncomfortable looks, clearly aware that something wasn't right about this situation. As the aircraft door opened, the lead officer, a tall man with salt and pepper hair and kind eyes, stepped into the cabin. His nameplate identified him as a police sergeant, and his demeanor was professional yet approachable. Behind him, 3 other officers positioned themselves strategically in the cabin, their body cameras clearly visible and recording. "Good afternoon, everyone," the sergeant announced in a calm, clear voice. "We're here to address a reported disturbance. We'll need to speak with all parties involved, and we appreciate your patience." His eyes scanned the cabin, taking in the scene before him. Before anyone could speak, a chorus of voices erupted from the passengers. "They didn't do anything wrong," called out one passenger. "I have it all on video," said another. The businessman who had been sitting across from the couple stood up, holding his phone. "Officer, I've documented everything. This is a clear case of harassment." The couple remained seated, their professional training evident in their calm demeanor. The wife pulled out her phone, showing the officers the text messages she'd sent to their legal colleagues during the flight, time-stamped documentation of everything that had happened. The sergeant listened carefully as multiple passengers came forward with their accounts. The young woman who had been recording showed her footage, while others shared photos and notes they'd taken. The elderly gentleman who had watched everything unfold gave a detailed account of the flight attendant's behavior. "Sir, ma'am," the sergeant addressed the couple, "would you mind sharing your side of the story?" The husband spoke clearly and concisely, outlining the events without emotion or accusation. His wife added relevant details, their legal training evident in their precise, factual recounting. The flight attendant, now faced with mounting evidence and passenger testimonies, began to shift uncomfortably. When asked to explain her actions, her responses were vague and contradictory. They were being disruptive, she insisted, but couldn't provide specific examples when pressed by the officers. A flight attendant from economy class stepped forward, her voice slightly shaky but determined. "I need to speak up," she said. "I witnessed some of these interactions, and I can't in good conscience support my colleague's version of events. What happened here wasn't right." The surgeon's body camera captured everything as more passengers came forward. A teacher on her way to a conference described how she'd watched the entire incident unfold. A medical professional 3 rows back shared his observations of the couple's consistent politeness despite the harassment. As the officers collected statements, they noticed something remarkable. Passengers from different backgrounds, ages, and walks of life were all telling the same story. The unity in their accounts painted a clear picture of what had really happened on that flight. The couple's dignified response throughout the investigation impressed everyone. They answered questions calmly, shared evidence willingly, and even expressed concern for the flight attendant's well-being despite her treatment of them. Their professional experience as attorneys showed in how they handled the situation, focusing on facts rather than emotions. After interviewing everyone involved, the sergeant made a decision that would later be praised as an example of excellent police work. He asked the couple if they'd like to press charges, but they declined, saying they were more interested in creating positive change than punishment. As the investigation wrapped up, passengers began sharing contact information with the couple, offering to serve as witnesses if needed. The airline's ground staff had already begun arranging alternative flights for everyone, but many passengers insisted they wanted to stay and provide formal statements first. The incident, which had started as a routine flight, had transformed into something much more significant. The body camera footage, combined with passenger videos and testimonies, would soon become a powerful tool for change in airline training programs nationwide. But for now, in that Denver airport terminal, it was simply about people coming together to stand up for what was right. The rest of the afternoon unfolded like a perfectly choreographed dance of justice and truth. In a quiet conference room at Denver International Airport, the truth emerged piece by piece, creating a complete picture that nobody could deny. The police sergeant sat at his laptop, methodically going through hours of collected evidence while the couple waited patiently nearby. The body camera footage told one part of the story, showing the couple's calm and professional demeanor throughout the entire interaction. But it was the flood of passenger videos that really brought everything into focus. One after another, clips showed the same pattern: unwarranted suspicion, unfair treatment, and remarkable patience from the couple. A Yum Software engineer's video captured the moment when the wife simply asked for water, only to be rudely denied while other passengers were being served. Another passenger's recording showed the husband being told to stay seated despite the seatbelt sign being off, while others moved freely about the cabin. Each piece of evidence added another layer to the story. The airline's regional manager arrived, looking worried and slightly out of breath. He'd been in a meeting when the call came through, and had driven straight to the airport. As he watched the videos and read through the passenger statements, his face grew increasingly concerned. "This isn't what we stand for," he said quietly, shaking his head. More testimonies poured in via email and phone. The businessman who'd been sitting across the aisle had already contacted his corporate travel department, detailing everything he'd witnessed. The teacher who'd been on her way to a conference had written a detailed account, timestamping every interaction she'd observed. The flight attendant from economy class, who had spoken up earlier, provided a written statement that proved crucial. She described how she had noticed the targeting behavior early in the flight, but had felt unsure about how to intervene. Her honest account of her colleagues' actions and her own hesitation would later become an important part of the airline's training materials. Meanwhile, social media was lighting up. Despite the couple's wish to handle things quietly, passengers had already shared their experiences online. Videos were being shared, comments were flooding in, and the story was spreading rapidly. What made it different from other viral incidents was the overwhelming evidence and the professional way everyone involved was handling the situation. The police sergeant finished reviewing all the evidence and called the couple over. "In my 20 years on the force," he said, "I've never seen a case with such clear documentation from so many different sources." He showed them his preliminary report, which included statements from 17 different passengers, 8 videos, and numerous photographs. What struck everyone was how the evidence painted a picture not just of what went wrong, but of how people came together to stand up for what was right. The videos showed other passengers quietly documenting everything: the supportive glances, the moments of quiet solidarity. It was a powerful testament to how people can unite against injustice. The airline's corporate office was already in full crisis management mode. Their legal team had reviewed the initial evidence and reached a conclusion that would shape their response. Instead of the typical defensive stance, they decided to take full responsibility and use this as an opportunity for meaningful change. The couple's legal background proved invaluable during these discussions. When the airline's representatives asked for their input on how to handle the situation, they focused not on punishment but on prevention. They spoke about training opportunities, about using this incident as a teaching tool, about turning a negative experience into positive change. As the afternoon wore on, more details emerged that strengthened the case. Security camera footage from the boarding area showed no unusual behavior from the couple. The gate agent who had checked their boarding passes came forward to state that they had been nothing but professional and courteous. The police sergeant finished his report with a recommendation that would later be praised as a model of community policing. Instead of pursuing criminal charges, he suggested a collaborative approach between law enforcement, the airline, and the couple to develop better training protocols. By early evening, what had started as a disturbing incident of bias had transformed into something else entirely: a masterclass in professional response, community support, and the power of truth. The couple's dignified handling of the situation, combined with the overwhelming evidence and support from witnesses, had created an opportunity for real change in airline industry practices. As they prepared to leave the airport that evening, the couple received an unexpected message. The airline's CEO wanted to speak with them personally, not just about this incident, but about their vision for preventing similar situations in the future. This conversation would mark the beginning of the next chapter in this remarkable story. The airline's response over the next few days showed just how seriously they were taking the incident. Within hours of the CEO learning about what had happened, things began moving at lightning speed. The corporate headquarters buzzed with activity as executives called emergency meetings and communication teams worked around the clock. The couple's hotel room phone rang early the next morning. It was the airline's CEO himself, calling from his car on his way to the office. His voice carried genuine concern as he apologized profusely for what had happened on their flight. Rather than making excuses or trying to minimize the situation, he listened intently as they shared their experience. What happened next surprised everyone. Instead of the typical corporate response of a carefully worded statement and a token gesture, the CEO took unprecedented action. He announced that the airline would temporarily ground the flight attendant while conducting a thorough investigation. But more importantly, he asked the couple for their input on how to prevent similar incidents in the future. Social media was exploding with the story. Videos from the flight had gone viral, with millions of views and thousands of comments. But what caught people's attention wasn't just the incident itself, it was how the airline was handling it. The CEO's direct involvement and transparent approach was something rarely seen in corporate America. The airline's internal investigation moved quickly but thoroughly. HR teams interviewed every crew member who had worked with the flight attendant in the past 6 months. They discovered a pattern of similar incidents that had gone unreported, with other passengers and crew members too uncomfortable to speak up at the time. The company's training department was completely overwhelmed by what they found. Their existing anti-bias training program, which they had thought was adequate, clearly had major gaps. When they reviewed the body camera footage and passenger videos, they realized they needed a complete overhaul of their training protocols. Meanwhile, the couple received an outpouring of support from unexpected places. Other airlines reached out, wanting to learn from the incident. Flight attendant unions contacted them, asking for input on improving their own training programs. Even other companies outside the airline industry began asking how they could prevent similar situations in their businesses. The airline's response went beyond just words. They announced a comprehensive review of all their customer service policies. They hired external diversity consultants to evaluate their training programs. They even created a new position, Chief Inclusion Officer, responsible for overseeing all aspects of customer and employee relations. What made their response stand out was its authenticity. Instead of trying to sweep things under the rug or issue generic statements, they acknowledged their failures openly and committed to real change. The CEO personally visited different airports, speaking with staff about the incident and listening to their concerns and suggestions. The flight attendant was placed on administrative leave, but the airline didn't stop there. They required all their flight attendants to undergo enhanced training, focusing on unconscious bias and cultural sensitivity. The company also established a confidential reporting system where employees could report concerns without fear of retaliation. Customer service policies were completely revamped. New guidelines were put in place for handling passenger complaints, with clear escalation procedures and accountability measures. The airline even created a passenger advocacy board, inviting frequent flyers from diverse backgrounds to provide regular feedback on their experiences. The corporate response became a case study in crisis management done right. Business schools began using it as an example of how companies should handle similar situations. The airline's stock price, which had initially dipped when the story broke, actually rose as investors appreciated their thorough and transparent approach. Through it all, The couple remained gracious and focused on positive change. When interviewed by major news outlets, they emphasized the importance of turning this negative experience into an opportunity for improvement. Their professional background as attorneys helped them articulate the need for systemic changes rather than just punitive measures. As the week drew to a close, the airline announced something unprecedented. They would be hosting a national conference on inclusive customer service, inviting representatives from other airlines, transportation companies, and customer service industries. The couple would be keynote speakers, sharing their experience and insights on creating meaningful change. The story had transformed from a troubling incident of bias into an example of how corporate America could respond to such situations with transparency, accountability, and a genuine commitment to change. The airline's response would go on to influence how other companies handled similar incidents, setting a new standard for corporate responsibility and customer care. The transformation from crisis to positive change began to take shape in unexpected ways. Rather than pursuing legal action, the couple saw an opportunity to create lasting impact. They spent countless hours in meetings with the airline's executive team, sharing their vision for a more inclusive travel experience for everyone. Their first major initiative launched just 3 weeks after the incident. The husband and wife team, drawing from their legal expertise, helped design a comprehensive training program that went far beyond typical diversity seminars. They brought in real stories, actual footage from various incidents, and created interactive scenarios that made people think deeply about their actions. The training sessions were unlike anything the airline industry had seen before. Flight attendants didn't just sit through boring presentations. They participated in real-world simulations. The couple worked alongside behavioral psychologists to create scenarios that challenged assumptions and helped staff understand the impact of unconscious bias. One particularly powerful session involved airline staff watching the videos from their flight, but with a twist. The training paused at key moments, asking participants what they would do differently. The economy class flight attendant who had spoken up became an unexpected hero in these sessions, showing others the importance of being an active ally. What made their approach unique was its focus on practical solutions rather than blame. They worked with the airline to create clear guidelines for situations where staff felt unsure. A new mobile app allowed crew members to quickly access these guidelines during flights, helping them make better decisions in the moment. The ripple effects spread beyond just one airline. Other carriers began reaching out, asking for help in reviewing their own policies. The couple found themselves traveling across the country, but this time as educators rather than passengers. They shared their story and their solutions with anyone willing to listen and learn. The wife's background in corporate law proved invaluable as they helped companies understand a business case for change. She showed how better training and clear policies not only prevented incidents, but also improved customer satisfaction and employee morale. The husband's experience in civil rights law helped ensure these changes had real teeth, with clear accountability measures. Their work caught the attention of transportation authorities. Soon, they were consulting with government agencies about industry-wide standards for customer service and anti-bias training. What had started as a terrible experience on one flight was now influencing policy at the national level. The most touching moments came from the personal stories they heard along the way. Flight attendants shared their own experiences of wanting to speak up but feeling unsure how. Passengers wrote letters describing similar situations they'd faced. Each story reinforced the importance of their work. Their training program included an innovative buddy system for flight crews. More experienced staff members were paired with newer ones, creating a support network for handling difficult situations. This simple change helped create a culture where people felt comfortable asking for help or advice. The airline's commitment to change showed in small but significant ways. They updated their booking system to remove any potential bias triggers. They revised their uniform policies to be more inclusive. They even changed their marketing materials to better reflect their diverse customer base. Technology played a big role in their solutions. They worked with app developers to create tools for reporting and tracking incidents. A new AI system helped identify patterns in customer complaints that might indicate bias. But they always emphasized that technology was just a tool. The real change had to come from people. 6 months into their work, the results were clear. Customer complaints about discrimination had dropped significantly. Employee satisfaction scores were up. The airline's training program became a model for the industry, with other companies paying to use their materials and methods. The flight attendant who had caused the original incident went through the training program herself. Though she no longer worked in the air, she found a new role helping to train others, sharing her story as a cautionary tale and an example of how people can learn and grow. What made the couple's approach so successful was its focus on practical, achievable changes rather than just theory. They understood that real change happens through consistent, daily actions. Their program gave people the tools and confidence to make better choices in the moment. As their work continued to expand, they never forgot the support of passengers from that original flight. Many had stayed in touch, and some even attended training sessions to share their perspectives. It was a reminder that positive change often starts with ordinary people choosing to do the right thing. 1 year after that fateful flight, the grand ballroom of a major hotel in Chicago was packed with airline industry executives, government officials, and media representatives. The couple stood at the podium, looking out at the sea of faces, ready to deliver their keynote address at the first national conference on inclusive air travel. The changes they had helped create were now visible throughout the industry. At airports across the country, new training programs were in place. Flight attendants wore small pins indicating they had completed the Enhanced Cultural Awareness certification. Customer service desks displayed clear guidelines about passenger rights and reporting procedures. Their nonprofit organization, founded 6 months earlier, had already trained over 5,000 airline staff members. The organization's mobile app, which provided real-time guidance for handling sensitive situations, had been downloaded by airline employees worldwide. What started as a response to one incident had grown into a global movement for change. The former flight attendant from their original flight sat in the audience. After completing the training program, she had become one of its strongest advocates. Her personal story of transformation resonated with others who struggled to recognize their own biases. She now traveled to different airlines, sharing her experience and helping others learn from her mistakes. The conference showcased real results. Airlines reported significant drops in discrimination complaints. Employee satisfaction scores had improved across the board. More importantly, passengers from all backgrounds reported feeling more welcome and respected during their travels. The industry was changing, one flight at a time. During their speech, the couple shared stories they'd collected over the past year. They talked about the flight attendant who prevented a similar incident by speaking up early. They mentioned the ground crew member who used their training to help a passenger feel heard and respected. Each story showed how small actions could make a big difference. The most powerful moment came when they played a video compilation of passenger testimonials. People from all walks of life shared how the new training programs had improved their travel experiences. The elderly gentleman from their original flight appeared in the video, describing how proud he was to see his testimony help create real change. Between sessions, attendees gathered in small groups, sharing their own experiences and ideas. Airline executives who had once been skeptical now showed off their company's improved customer satisfaction scores. Government regulators discussed new industry standards based on the couple's recommendations. The energy in the room was electric with possibility. Their presentation included surprising statistics. Airlines that had implemented the new training program saw a 60% reduction in customer complaints. Employee retention rates improved by 40%. Even on-time performance got better, partly because crews were better equipped to handle potential conflicts quickly and effectively. The conference wasn't just about celebrating success. It was about planning for the future. The couple announced new initiatives, including a scholarship program for students interested in aviation careers and a mentorship program for airline staff. They were building a legacy that would continue long after their story faded from headlines. In a quiet moment during the lunch break, the wife found herself chatting with a young flight attendant who had just completed the training program. The attendant shared how the program had changed not just how she worked, but how she viewed the world. These personal transformations were perhaps the most meaningful result of their work. The husband spent time with airline executives, discussing how to make these changes permanent. They talked about incorporating the training into initial hiring processes, adding regular refresher courses, and creating career advancement opportunities tied to cultural competency skills. The focus was on making inclusion a fundamental part of airline operations. As the conference drew to a close, the couple made one final announcement. Their nonprofit would be expanding its work beyond airlines to other transportation industries. They had already received requests from train companies, bus lines, and cruise ships. Their model for creating positive change was proving adaptable to many different situations. The story that began with one difficult flight had transformed into a movement for lasting change. The couple had shown that with patience, persistence, and a focus on solutions rather than blame, real transformation was possible. Their work had not only changed policies and procedures, it had changed hearts and minds. The conference ended with a standing ovation, but for the couple, it was just another step in their ongoing journey. As they left the stage, they were already thinking about their next projects, their next challenges, their next opportunities to make a difference. They had turned a moment of injustice into a lifetime of positive change, proving that sometimes the worst experiences can lead to the best outcomes.